Today, we are starting something brand new on the channel, and honestly, this is one of the franchises I've been most excited to revisit for a long time, especially out of all the scheduled stuff I've put out this year for us revisiting old series, going back to stuff. We're diving into a full retrospective series that I'm calling the Mummy Saga, where we're going to go film by film through one of the most fun, adventurous, and surprisingly influential franchises of the late 90s and early 2000s. We're talking about ancient curses, desert treasure hunts, resurrected monsters, massive action set pieces, and one of the most charismatic movie heroes of that era. This series is going to cover the entire journey, starting with The Mummy from 1999, moving into The Mummy Returns, a spin-off The Scorpion King, the third film, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, the controversial 2017 reboot, and finally building toward the brand new 2026 film that's bringing the franchise back into the spotlight. But before we get into any of that, we have to talk about the movie that made all of this possible, because when The Mummy hit theaters in 1999, it didn't just revive an old monster. It revived an entire style of blockbuster filmmaking that Hollywood had almost forgotten how to do. But before we get started on that, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon producers. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and helping these videos happen. And if you want even more content like spoiler reviews, movie vlogs, game reviews, and early uploads like this one, check out the Patreon link in the description.
Take my hand and I will spare your friends.
Oh dear.
By the late 1990s, classic movie monsters weren't exactly popular anymore. Characters like Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Mummy were legendary in cinema history, but they were seen as an outdated type of film. Studios didn't really know how to modernize them in a way that felt exciting to modern audiences, and that is when director Stephen Sommers came in with a very different idea. Instead of making a straight horror movie like the newly released 2026 film, he decided to lean into adventure, and he wanted to make something that felt like the classic serials of the past. He wanted something big, something fun, something energetic, something with tone similar to Indiana Jones, where danger and humor existed side by side. And that decision is what made The Mummy stand out. This movie isn't just a horror film, it is an action movie, a comedy, a romance, and a monster movie all rolled into one, and somehow it balances all those elements in a way that still works more than 2 decades later. The film opens in ancient Egypt, and right away you can tell that the movie understands scale. We're introduced to the city of Thebes, a massive civilization filled with power, wealth, and political intrigue. This is where we meet Imhotep, the high priest who is secretly having an affair with the pharaoh's mistress, Anck-su-namun. Now, this opening sequence is important because it establishes the emotional core of the villain. Imhotep isn't the evil that you would normally see for the sake of being evil. He's motivated by love, and that drives everything he does throughout this story. When the pharaoh discovers the affair, chaos then erupts. He's murdered, the lovers are captured, and Imhotep is sentenced to one of the most horrifying punishments imaginable, being buried alive as part of the Hamdai ritual. The film makes this moment genuinely unsettling. The priests are chanting, the darkness is closing in, and the scarabs are crawling all over him. It's pretty pure horror imagery. And before the tomb is sealed, the movie plants the central idea of the story that some curses are so powerful they should never be disturbed. Then the story jumps forward to the 1920s, and this is where the movie introduces one of the most iconic action heroes of that era, Rick O'Connell, played by Brendan Fraser. Rick is exactly the kind of character this movie needed. He's brave, he's sarcastic, resourceful, and just reckless enough to get himself into trouble. But what makes him work is that he actually feels like a real person. He gets scared, he makes mistakes, and he doesn't always have a plan. And Brendan Fraser, of course, brings so much charm to the role that you immediately root for him. He's not trying to be cool, he's just naturally is cool. That charisma carries the film, especially during the action scenes, where his humor keeps things from ever feeling too heavy. We meet Evelyn, played by Rachel Weisz. Evelyn is a librarian and an aspiring Egyptologist, and she's one of the most important characters of the movie and this franchise because she represents curiosity and knowledge. She's not a fighter like Rick, but she's the one who understands the history behind everything. She's the one who can read those ancient texts, and in many ways, she's a driving force behind the entire adventure. What makes Evelyn such a strong character is that she's intelligent and capable without losing her vulnerability. She makes mistakes, She gets scared, but she never stops pushing forward, and that balance makes her relatable, and it also gives the movie emotional weight. Once Rick and Evelyn team up, the movie shifts into full adventure mode. Their journey to the legendary city of the dead is where the film really finds its rhythm. This section of the movie feels like classic blockbuster storytelling. There's danger, humor, and a constant sense of discovery. Every step forward feels exciting because the characters are exploring something mysterious and forbidden that they themselves have not seen. The desert setting adds to the atmosphere. The endless sand dunes, ancient ruins, feeling that something is buried beneath this surface, and it all builds tension and anticipation. And then, of course, they find the tomb. One of the most memorable moments of the film happens when Evelyn accidentally reads from the Book of the Dead. It's a simple mistake, but it has massive consequences. This is the turning point of the story, the moment when curiosity unleashes something ancient and dangerous. The tomb begins to tremble, the sand shifts, and the curse is then activated. Suddenly, the adventure becomes a fight for survival, because Imhotep returns. When Imhotep is resurrected, the movie fully embraces its horror roots. He starts off as a decaying corpse, barely human, and slowly regains strength as the story progresses. What makes Imhotep such an effective villain is that he feels unstoppable and controls the elements, and brings plagues upon the land and commands the dead. But at the same time, he's not really just a monster. He's a character with a goal, and he wants to resurrect the woman he loves, and he's willing to destroy anyone who stands in his way to do it. As the story moves into the second half, the movie becomes a non-stop action spectacle. There are chases through the desert, battles against undead warriors, and large-scale sequences that feel massive in scope. One of the film's greatest strengths is its pacing. and never lingers too long on one moment. There's always movement and always momentum and always a sense of the story is pushing something forward. And the action scenes are pretty well. They're staged in a way that is very easy to follow. You always know where the characters are and what they're trying to do and what's at stake. Another reason The Mummy holds up so well is the chemistry between the characters, especially Rick and Evelyn. Their relationship grows naturally over the course of the film. They start off as strangers and really and truly kind of hate each other, and then become partners and eventually fall in love, but it never feels forced. Their conversations are filled with humor and personality, which makes the emotional moments hit harder later in the story. The climax of The Mummy brings everything together. The characters return for one final confrontation, and the stakes feel pretty enormous. The city begins to collapse, the undead rise from the sand, and time is running out, and in the middle of that chaos, the heroes have to stop Imhotep before he completes his ritual. In that sense, it's a pretty classic blockbuster finale. It's loud, it's exciting, and emotionally satisfying, but that's exactly why it works. More than 25 years later, The Mummy still feels fresh, and that's not something you can say about every movie from that era. I remember watching this on the VHS tape as a kid, and it's been a while since I've watched it, and it still holds up. The reason it works is because it understands entertainment. It knows how to balance action, humor, suspense, emotion in a way that keeps the audience engaged from beginning to end. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also never feels lazy. It's a movie that wants to entertain you, and it succeeds in doing so. The Mummy is one of those rare films that captures lightning in a bottle. It launched a franchise, created iconic characters, and set the standard for adventure movies in the modern era. For me personally, this is one of those films that reminds you why blockbuster movies can be so much fun. It's exciting, it's funny, it's memorable, and it's endlessly rewatchable. And as the first chapter in this franchise, it lays the foundation for everything that comes next. Next in the Mummy Saga, we're diving deep into The Mummy Returns, a sequel that goes bigger in every possible way, introducing new mythology, new monsters, and one of the most ambitious action finales of the early 2000s. And trust me, you're going to want to watch that. So hit the like, subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Sirion. Come with me, my princess. It is time to make you mine forever.
For all eternity, idiot.
Welcome back. Today we continue our journey through one of the most entertaining blockbuster franchises of the early 2000s. Welcome back to part 2 of the Mummy Saga. In the last episode, we talked about how the Mummy revived the adventure genre and introduced us to Rick and Evelyn O'Connell and the terrifying curse of Imhotep. And the film struck a perfect balance between action, humor, horror, and romance and became an instant classic. But when a movie is that successful, the next question is always the same. Can the sequel live up to the hype? because sequels have a reputation for going bigger, louder, and sometimes losing what made the original special. And in many ways, The Mummy Returns absolutely goes bigger. The stakes are clearly higher, the mythology is deeper, and the action is definitely more explosive. But it also takes some risk, and not all of them unfortunately pay off. So today we're diving into one of the most ambitious sequels of its era, a film that expanded the world of The Mummy and introduced a character who would go on to launch an entire spin-off franchise. So right from the beginning, this movie makes it clear that it's aiming for that scale. The opening scene takes us back to ancient Egypt once again, but this time the story focuses on a new figure, a warrior known as the Scorpion King.
Anubis accepted his offer and spared his life.
And this introduction is important because it sets up the central mythology of the film. We learned that the Scorpion King was once a powerful ruler who made a deal with the god Anubis in exchange for ultimate power. And in return, he led an army that conquered cities and spread destruction across the land. But that power came at a cost. And that legend becomes the foundation for everything that this film follows. This opening immediately tells the audiences that the sequel isn't just repeating the first movie, it's expanding the universe. When we jump forward in this film to the 1930s, it's kind of a jump because we see that Rick and Evelyn are no longer just adventurers. They are married and have settled into a new life. And now they have a son named Alex. This change is one of the biggest differences between the first film and the sequel because instead of focusing solely on romance and discovery, the story now revolves around a family. And that shift really raises the stakes emotionally because now it's not just about survival, it's about protecting someone that they love. Rick once again is played brilliantly by Fraser, who brings the same charm and humor that made the original so enjoyable. He's confident, resourceful, and always ready for some danger, but now there's a new dimension to his character because he is a father. And that responsibility changes how he approaches every single situation. Meanwhile, Evelyn, this time played once again by Rachel Weisz, becomes even more central to the story. The film reveals that she has a mysterious past connected to ancient Egypt, and that connection adds a layer of destiny to her character because she's no longer just a scholar, she is part of the mythology itself. Of course, the sequel to The Mummy wouldn't be complete without the return of its iconic villain. Imhotep is resurrected once again, and this time his goal is even more ambitious. Instead of simply resurrecting his love that I couldn't pronounce in the first video, he now seeks to control the power of the Scorpion King and his army. That objective raises the stakes dramatically because if Imhotep succeeds, then the consequences won't just affect a single city. They could affect the entire world, and that sense of global danger gives the film a much larger scale than its predecessor. One of the defining characteristics of this series and of this film in particular is its pacing. This movie rarely does slow down. There's always something going on. From the moment the story begins, the characters are constantly moving, traveling across continents like Indiana Jones, escaping danger, and chasing ancient artifacts. There are train chases, temple battles, desert pursuits, and large-scale action sequences that push the limits of what the franchise had done before. The film also embraces spectacle in a big way, and while that makes it incredibly entertaining, it also means the story sometimes feels more chaotic than the original. One of the most important moments from the film is the introduction of the Scorpion King, played by Dwayne Johnson. At the time, this was a major... Jesus, why did I say it like that? At the time, this was a major turning point for this wrestler because it marked the transition of him going from a professional wrestler into a blockbuster movie star. And even though his screen time in this film is relatively brief, his presence is pretty memorable and the character is larger than life, pretty powerful and intimidating and visually striking. And the introduction was so successful that it did lead to this spin-off that we will be talking about in the next video, launching a brand new franchise. If the first movie felt like a classic adventure, this sequel feels like a full-scale blockbuster spectacle. Everything is bigger. The set pieces are more elaborate, the CGI is crazier, not super great. The enemies are more dangerous, the stakes are higher, and one of the most memorable sequences is the battle involving the massive army of Anubis. It's a moment that showcases the film's ambition and its willingness to push visual effects to new levels. But at the same time, like I said, some of the CGI during that final battle has not aged well. It has not. And that contrast kind of becomes noticeable when we revisit the movie today. I thought the rumors were not true. I haven't seen this movie since I was a child. They are true. But despite all the explosions, supernatural chaos, the emotional core of The Mummy is the relationship with the family and their son. Alex brings a lot of humor to this story because he is put in danger. The stakes do feel more personal. The family dynamic is what keeps this film really grounded, even when the action comes over the top. And it does remind the audience that beneath all the spectacle, this is still a story about love and loyalty. And I feel like the final act of this movie really brings everything together in a massive showdown between Imhotep, the Scorpion King, and the O'Connell family. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's filled with a bunch of physical spectacles that, while not looking super great, delivers on a satisfying resolution to this story. The heroes all survive, the villains are all defeated, and the adventure comes to an end, at least for now. But we know there's more to come. They're making a Mummy 4, baby! There's a lot to admire about The Mummy Returns. It expands the world, it deepens the mythology, and it delivers some of the most entertaining action sequences of the early 2000s. The chemistry between the cast remains really strong, the humor still lands, and the sense of adventure is still very much alive. Unfortunately, what doesn't work and the weaknesses are that at the same time, the story can feel a little overcrowded. The pacing is a little overwhelming because of how fast it is and all these storylines. And a heavy reliance on CGI makes some of these moments not timeless, I'll put it like that. These issues don't ruin the movie, though. I feel like they have like that balance of polish and like the original film. It's just that they try to go a little too crazy. In the end, I think The Mummy Returns is exactly what you expected from a big blockbuster sequel. Bigger, louder, more ambitious, even with its flaws. I think that it remains an incredibly fun movie that captures the spirit of the adventure and delivers non-stop entertainment, and for fans of the franchise is an essential chapter in the story. Next stop on the Mummy Saga, we're stepping into something very different. You already know what it is, the spin-off, a new hero, and the origin story of a character who would become a major action star. We're talking the Scorpion King. Best be there, best like and subscribe.
Alternative means of transportation.
A double-decker bus!
It was his idea.
Was not!
Was too.
Just go!
Today, Chocolatiers, we take a slight detour in the Mummy Saga. But it is an important one, because after the massive success of The Mummy Returns, the franchise did something unexpected. Instead of immediately jumping into another sequel, it decided to explore the origin story of a character who had only appeared briefly, but made a huge impression. The character was the Scorpion King, and the result was a spin-off film that shifted the tone of the franchise, introduced a new kind of hero, and helped launch one of the biggest action stars in Hollywood. Today we're talking about The Scorpion King, a movie that trades ancient curses and undead monsters for swords, warriors, and classic fantasy adventure. When the audiences first saw The Scorpion King in The Mummy Returns, the character immediately stood out. He was mysterious, powerful, and visually striking, and even though his screen time was limited, he felt larger than life. Studios recognized that potential right away to get money. At the time, the actor playing the Scorpion King, Dwayne Johnson, was known primarily as a professional wrestler, but he had charisma, physical presence, and screen appeal, and Hollywood saw an opportunity to turn him into a leading man. So instead of making him a villain again, the spin-off reimagined the Scorpion King as a hero, and that decision changed everything. One of the first things that you notice about the Scorpion King is how different it feels from the previous films. This movie steps away from the heavy supernatural elements and focuses more on a grounded fantasy world. There are still mystical forces and ancient legends, but the story is driven primarily by human conflict rather than monsters. We are introduced to the Scorpion King, who's a skilled warrior and assassin who belongs to a group of people known as the Acadians, a tribe of mercenaries feared throughout the land, and right away the movie establishes him as a type of survivor. He's tough, resourceful, and lives by a code of honor. He is a lone wolf in this film, and that isolation becomes a key part of his journey overall. He's a very different kind of protagonist compared to Rick O'Connell. Rick is charming and sarcastic, often relying on humor to get through dangerous situations. Meanwhile, the Scorpion King, on the other hand, is more serious, more focused, and a warrior first and a leader second, and a hero only when circumstances force him to step up. What makes his character so interesting is that he starts a story motivated by revenge. His brother's been killed, and his people have been wiped out, and he's determined to take down a tyrant responsible. That emotional drive gives the character depth, and makes his transformation into a hero feel pretty earned.
Bring the woman to me! first man to touch her will have to come through me.
Every great adventure, of course, needs a strong villain. And in this movie, that role belongs to Memnon, a ruthless warlord determined to conquer the known world. Memnon isn't just powerful, he is strategic, he uses fear as a weapon, and he relies on a prophecy to maintain control over his enemies. This dynamic creates an interesting conflict because the story becomes a battle between fate and free will. Memnon believes that he's destined to rule, meanwhile the Scorpion King himself, Dwayne, believes destiny can be challenged. And that clash of beliefs drives the entire narrative. As the story unfolds, Mr. Johnson forms alliances with a group of unlikely companions, thieves, rebels, warriors, and this part of the movie feels like a classic fantasy adventure. There are some desert battles, some stealth missions, and he even escapes from enemy strongholds at one point. And there are also some moments of humor that lighten the tone. The pacing is also fast like most of the Mummy films before it, and the movie never stays in a place for too long, headed towards that final confrontation with Memnon. Compared to the previous films in the franchise, the action of Scorpion King feels a lot more grounded. There are fewer supernatural creatures and more hand-to-hand combat. Sword fights take center stage. Archery becomes a major set piece, and actually is how he takes out Memnon at the end of the film. And the physicality of the action feels more personal. This shift in style helps the movie stand on its own, even though it's connected to a larger franchise. One of the central themes of the movie is leadership. At the beginning of the story, he is focused solely on revenge, like I said before. But as he gains these allies and faces greater challenges, he begins to realize that his actions affect him or affect other people more than himself. He's no longer fighting for personal vengeance. He's fighting for a future of the entire kingdom. And that transformation from lone warrior to leader is that emotional heart that this film is kind of going for. And I really actually like the climax in this film. The action scene is awesome. The final battle brings everything together in a large-scale confrontation between the Scorpion King and Memnon. It's intense, physical, and it delivers the kind of satisfying payoff with a one-liner, I might add.
Catch this.
That you expect from a fantasy adventure. By the end of the movie, the Scorpion King has earned the title of the Scorpion King, not because he was born into power, but because he proved himself worthy of it. One of the biggest strengths of this film is that it's pretty simple. The story is very straightforward, it's not overcomplicated, the characters are very easy to understand, we understand their emotions. The action is consistently entertaining. Every fight scene still, I feel like, holds up. It's very fun. Another major strength is the performance of Dwayne Johnson. He's very fun in this. The Rock's awesome in this film. The film also had a turning point in his career, as making him a leading man, as we know. He's got a lot of charisma in this film. It was like a 180. I was watching this, I was like, oh, awesome. Now, what doesn't work in this movie, however, is that at the same time, you sit over there and look at a movie like this, even though I still like it, it's got its flaws. The tone feels a little bit lighter than the previous films, which may actually surprise fans expecting more of those horror elements. The visual effects, while impressive for the time, don't always hold up. They're not as bad as Mummy Returns, especially in the Scorpion King stuff, but they're still there. And the story, while entertaining, doesn't have the same emotional depth as the main entries in this franchise. In the end, the Scorpion King is a fun, energetic spin-off that expands the world of the franchise in a new direction. It introduces a new memorable hero, delivers plenty of action, and it proves that the universe of the Mummy is big enough to support stories beyond the original characters. Even though it feels different from the main films, it's an important chapter in this saga. And with that, next in the Mummy Saga, we return to the main storyline with The Mummy 3. New location, new mythology, new direction for the franchise. We'll be diving into The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which I have to still watch. I'll be doing so tonight before I make my video tomorrow. And this is where the saga is taking a controversial turn. I know the plot, I still remember it, but this is going off brain about 10, 15 years ago. So I'm very, very excited to touch on that one. That's the one where I just remember that we had is it the mom? I don't know. It's the mom. We'll find out. Click, you like, subscribe. We'll find out tomorrow. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Today, in the Mummy Saga, we reached a turning point, because after the success of The Mummy Returns and the spin-off adventure, The Scorpion King, the franchise took a long break for several years. It seemed like the story of Rick O'Connell and his family came to an end, but in 2008 they said, money! And they took a very different direction. I actually like this film. You would probably think, based on that, I don't. The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. This film changed the setting, changed the mythology, and it changed the tone of the franchise in ways that fans are still kind of debating today. So the big question is simple. Did this movie evolve the series, or did it lose what made the original special? Let's find out.
She speaks Yeti?
Now, by the time this movie arrived, the landscape of the blockbuster filmmaking had changed dramatically. The early 2000s had given ways to new generations of action films. The audiences were expecting bigger spectacle, faster pacing. We had gotten some Fast and Furiouses by now. And at the same time, the original cast had aged. Okay, we got to keep the story fresh. So instead of returning to Egypt, the franchise moved to China. And instead of resurrecting a mummy from ancient Egypt, the story focused on a cursed emperor from Chinese history. The decision was bold, but it also carried some risk, because the Egyptian setting had been a defining part of this whole franchise's identity, including the spin-offs. One constant did remain, though. Rick O'Connell was back, once again played by Brendan Fraser. Rick returns as an older, more experienced adventurer who has begun to feel the weight of time. This version of Rick is still brave and capable, but this time he's also starting to question his purpose. After years of danger and excitement, he finds himself struggling with the idea of retirement, and that internal conflict gives the character some new dimension. He's no longer just a fearless hero, he is a man trying to figure out what comes next after you're the fearless hero. Now, this is one of the most talked about aspects of this film. I didn't realize this happened until I rewatched it. What's going on? Rachel Weisz, whose performance became a defining part of this franchise, is not here. But in this film, the role was taken over by Maria Bello. And that change is definitely noticeable, 100%. We shouldn't have just had her. I don't understand. I hate that. She brings a new type of energy for sure. She's more assertive, more mature, but many fans struggled to adjust from Miss Weisz not being in this role. And it's going to throw me off a little bit in the fourth one. We're like, she's back. Like, dude, what did she get? What happened? What did she put on extra makeup that day? Like, it's gonna throw me off when I rewatch these after the fourth one comes. It's doing something to me. Now this time around, instead of Imhotep, the central villain of the story is the Dragon Emperor, played by Jet Li. The Emperor is a powerful ruler who sought immortality and ultimate control, only to be cursed and turned into a terracotta statue along with his army. What makes this villain interesting is his ability to transform into different forms, including mythical creatures, which adds variety to the action scenes. But at the same time, the character lacks the emotional depth that made Imhotep so memorable. Imhotep was driven by love, and the Dragon Emperor is just driven by conquest. And that difference kind of does change the whole tone of this story compared to the other ones. Now, I did really like this new setting. Moving to China allowed the filmmakers to introduce new location and cultural elements. Snow-covered mountains, ancient temples, hidden tombs guarded by mythical forces. Visually, this movie offers a fresh look at the franchise, but thematically it feels less connected to the original trilogy. The sense of mystery and horror that defined the earlier films is kind of replaced by a more straightforward action-adventure style film. Another major development in this film was the role of Alex, Rick and Evelyn's son. In the previous film, he was a child. Here, he is a grown man, basically young adult. Following in his adventurer parents' footsteps, the dynamic creates tension between father and son, because of course Rick wants to protect him and Alex wants to prove himself. That conflict adds emotional stakes to the story and gives the characters room to grow. Like the earlier films, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor aims for a larger scale spectacle. There are sword fights, car chases, battles involving massive armies, and some of the visual effects are very impressive, I will add. But I feel like the tone feels more serious and less playful than the original films. And the humor is still there, but it doesn't really land as naturally as it did before. It feels kind of forced. And without the balance of horror and adventure that defined the first two, the action sometimes feels less distinctive. Now, despite those changes, the film does have its strengths. Brendan Fraser is still my GOAT. He remains compelling as a lead, brings warmth and charisma in his role. The new setting is awesome, provides some visual variety, and the story continues the theme of family and legacy that became central to the franchise. There's also a sense of ambition in the film's willingness to try something different. Instead of repeating the same formula, it attempts to expand the world in a new direction. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot that doesn't work about this film. At the same time, the movie does struggle to capture the magic of these original films. The change in location feels disconnected from the franchise's roots while also being a positive, and the villain lacks emotional depth. I feel like the absence of Rachel Weisz is also felt throughout the story. The issues don't necessarily make the movie unwatchable, but they do make it feel like a complete step down from the earlier entries. In the end, The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is a movie that tried to reinvent the franchise. Some of those changes did work, but unfortunately others did not. But regardless of how you feel about it, this film represents an important moment in the saga, the point where the series shifted direction and struggled to find its identity again. And for many, many years after this movie, the future of the Mummy franchise remained uncertain.
I love my popcorn. Movies, popcorn.
So next in the Mummy franchise, we jump ahead a decade to a film that attempted to reboot this franchise entirely. New cast, new universe. Yeah, remember they called that the Dark Universe? Oh my god. We're talking The Mummy 2017, a film, a movie that apparently I have watched. I looked up clips on this today because I know I was going to have to rewatch this for a video. I don't remember any of that. It looks somehow worse. I ironically remember the Jekyll stuff. Dr. Jekyll, I remember that. I was like, okay, I thought that was a movie, and it's not. He's in there because they're trying to MCU it. Are you ready? Like and subscribe. We made it today in the Mummy Saga. We are talking about the most controversial chapter in this franchise, because after the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, the series disappeared for nearly a decade. For a long time, it seemed like the adventure of Rick O'Connell and his family had come to an end, and the franchise had been buried. But in 2017, the studio made a bold decision. Instead of continuing the original storyline, they decided to start over, a full reboot, if you would, a dark universe built around classic monsters, and starting with the movie The Mummy. And on paper, the project sounded massive. It wasn't just supposed to be another Mummy movie, it was meant to be the beginning of something much bigger, a shared universe. A dark universe. I'm sorry, I gotta quit. But when the film finally arrived, the reaction was mixed at best. And let me go and stop right here. Is that just not the dumbest thing ever? They were like, yeah, like what was the plan? Were they gonna have like an Avengers Endgame? Like maybe, I don't know, have like, let's say, an evil version of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like the Bride of Frankenstein or something like that, where they're all like going to team up and fight? Like, what the hell was the goal? But when the film finally arrived, the reaction was mixed at best. So today, we're diving into a movie that had enormous expectations, ambitious plans, and a legacy it struggled to live up to. But before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon producers. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and helping these videos happen. If you want even more content like spoiler reviews, movie vlogs, game reviews, and early uploads like this, check out the Patreon link in the description. To understand this film, you have to understand the idea behind it. I don't think anybody could. But Universal Pictures wanted to bring back their classic monsters like Dracula, the Invisible Man, Wolfman, and connect them in the MCU-style universe. They called it the Dark Universe. This was clearly inspired by the success, like I said, of the MCU, of other universes they're building towards, and The Mummy 2017 was supposed to be that foundation. It was supposed to be their Iron Man. It would introduce new characters, establish the rules of this universe, and set up future stories involving other monsters. The ambition was quite huge, but that ambition also created some pressure because the movie had to do more than tell a good story. It had to launch an entire franchise. So instead of Rick O'Connell, the film introduced a completely new protagonist. We got Nick Morton, played by Tom Cruise. Nick is very different from the heroes we've seen before. He's not a noble adventurer. He is not a family man. He's more of a rogue, I guess if you would. He's like a soldier who survives by bending the rules and looking out for himself. And that personality shift kind of changes the whole tone of this story, because where Rick O'Connell was charming and heroic, Nick Morton is more cynical and unpredictable. That makes him interesting, but it also makes him harder to connect with emotionally in this runtime. So the central threat in this film, the Mummy herself, is Princess Amenet, played by Sofia Boutella. Her backstory is one of the strongest parts of this movie. She was once destined to rule Egypt, but when her birthright was taken away, she made a deal with a dark power in exchange for revenge. That decision led to her being cursed and buried alive, a punishment meant to keep her evil contained forever, but of course it didn't. And this origin story mirrors the tragic elements that made Imhotep such a compelling villain in earlier films. but the film approaches her character with a darker tone. She's definitely more ruthless, more violent, a little bit more creepy, and more destructive, especially having, you know, extra CGI here since it's 2017 now. Now, one of the biggest differences between this movie and the earlier entries in the franchise is its overall tone. The original films balance horror with humor and adventure, and this reboot pretty much just leans heavily into action and supernatural horror. The atmosphere is definitely a lot darker. They meant it when they said dark universe. And the stakes feel a lot more serious in the sense of that fun had defined the earlier movies, but it's largely absent here. That tonal shift divided audience, and some appreciated the darker approach. Not me, because I just somehow completely missed this in the theaters back in the day. And others missed the lighthearted energy of that original trilogy. In terms of spectacle, the Mummy 2017 delivers some impressive sequences. There is a plane crash scene that unfolds in zero gravity. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna give you flowers. There are large-scale battles involving supernatural forces. Pretty cool. And there are moments of visual destruction that feel very massive in scope, but spectacle alone, unfortunately, isn't enough to carry that story, and that is where this film begins to struggle. Now, another major focus of the movie is, of course, world building, because like I said, this is their Iron Man 1. The story introduces an organization dedicated to tracking and containing supernatural threats, led by Dr. Jekyll himself. Russell Crowe, yes. Actually, that was not bad casting. The idea was to create a shared universe where multiple films could connect and build towards large conflicts, but in practice, this setup sometimes feels a lot forced, like he's just kind of in the movie, instead of focusing entirely on its own story that they were already building towards. Now, I do think there are definitely things this movie does well. Like I said, I think the action scenes are not that bad. Sofia Boutella delivers a strong performance as the villain. She's bringing intensity and physicality to this role. The visual effects are actually pretty impressive, and the film attempts to bring classic monster mythology into a modern setting, which is also pretty cool. Dracula Untold is one of my favorite monster type movies because they do that same thing. The filmmakers weren't just, trying to make another sequel. They were trying to reinvent the franchise, at least trying something new. Hey, I'll give it to them. Now, it doesn't work as at the same time the film tries to struggle all that with some balance, and it doesn't work. The tone's very inconsistent, pacing's very uneven, and the focus on building a large universe sometimes overshadows that central story. Perhaps most importantly, the movie lacks a sense of fun and adventure that made the original film so memorable. Without that emotional connection, the spectacle feels a lot less engaging. So, when The Mummy 2017 was released, it also didn't perform as well as the studio had hoped. Critical reception was mixed, but usually we could see, especially back then, that was fine. But it was not. And the ambitious Dark Universe plan was quickly put on hold. They didn't even try to get one more out of the door. I can at least see they tried to let's do one. No, they said we're done. Building a franchise stopped, but even though the Dark Universe didn't succeed, the story of the Mummy was not clearly over, because years later, we're getting this new chance. So the next video on this franchise will be the 2026 Lee Cronin film, which I'm actually excited for. I know a lot of people are going in with negative attitudes on that. I just feel like, we live in this society online where everybody critiques everything and everybody gets mad about everything before they even say anything. Just like this movie, I think that without the charm and humor and sense of adventure that defined the earlier films, it kind of struggled to capture the magic of the original. And I feel like this new one is just kind of like, hey, we're not doing anything with the original. We're just like, hey, it's a mummy story, new stelling, whatever. And so, yeah, as we reach the destination for this entire journey has been building towards, there will be a ranked video at the end of this. If you're watching the compilation format, which I will be making, that'll be the exact next thing that pops up after the review. And so, yes, Mummy 2026 is coming. Like, subscribe for that, and I will give you my honest review. I hope it doesn't suck. It looks like it doesn't suck, but it could. It could. It could. And I'm scared. They're doing it again. Welcome back to another video, Chocolatiers. So, this is technically part of the Mummy Saga. The past couple weeks I've been covering the majority of the Mummy films, I guess I'll say. I don't want to say all of them because it's only been the 1991 one, or 1999 one with Brendan Fraser, leading all the way up to this one. So we did talk about the Tom Cruise mess. There will be a ranked video. But this is Lee Cronin's Mummy. And Lee Cronin, did the last Evil Dead, Rise, and after leaving this movie, I can tell you right now, this is Evil Dead Egypt. This is what this film should have been titled. Now, I want to clarify something. I call myself always in the movie news, and I notice a lot of people haven't really picked up on something about the title. So it seems more like this was Universal and producers and potentially Blumhouse being like, "Hey, let's call it The Mummy. Get those butts in seats." Lee Cronin, I could be correct or incorrect, but I believe that he did not want to call it that. I can't remember what the initial title was that he was working with. He did not want to call us The Mummy, so I don't blame that on him fully. So every time I see those complaints, people are like, "It's not really The Mummy." It's like, that ain't a homeboy. Okay, that ain't what he put in the script. So anyways, this film is kind of a mixed bag for me. Which sucks because I kind of like to be a little bit of the minority online. I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Anyways, I like to be the minority online, or I like to, I'm seeing a lot of people hating on this, whatever this and that. I think I like this a little bit more than I've been seeing people like it, but I still had a lot of issues. For starters, let's start with my AMC theaters. So I believe the Evil Dead Burn trailers was a play before this. Didn't play before mine. I said, okay, that's cool. Maybe it's in select ones, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be in all of them. Didn't play in front of mine. Then sound quality is a little off. I said, okay, I can still hear. I was sitting close to the front. But the biggest issue I had with this film wasn't even the film itself. So the film is 2 hours and 14 minutes, which is a little long. It starts to drag towards the third act. But AMC was like, do you want to see 30 previews? And I was like, I guess. And so 30-something minutes plus that. This was a 3-hour thing for me. This was a 3-hour event. It was like watching Endgame or any of the Dunes. I just want to throw that out there. I'm tired, okay? So this film, I just want to start with the positives first. Let's do that first, okay? I don't try to be all negative, but it's got some problems. So positively, let's start out with the plot. I actually enjoy the plot for most of the part. Not all of it, but most of it I did. So you have these people who's living in Cairo. They're from the United States, his family is, and they've got 2 kids, Katie and whatever the other son's name is, and Seb. And then they've got a baby on the way. Okay, and they're over there because the father is like doing some stuff for the news, wherever it's at. He's like working with that local news. And he actually, the morning that this big event happens, he gets a call that he is fixing to go to New Mexico to take over a morning job at like their big news station, or whatever. And so it's really cool. A lot of money, a lot of career opportunities, stuff that he wants. It's the job that he's been wanting. So he looks up and he sees when he's talking to his wife in their daughter Katie's like little whatever dollhouse, a lot of chocolate. And he's like, "You been letting her eat all this chocolate?" And she's like, "No, actually I haven't, honey." And he's like, "God damn, who's been giving our child this chocolate?" And so goes talks to the son. Son's being stupid. He's like, "I don't want to get in trouble." He's like, "Boy, who gave her the damn chocolate?" He goes out there. Somebody's kidnapped his daughter. It's like, oh shit. So daughter's been kidnapped. It's been Skip's 8 years. He's pretty much working this news station, but he's not doing what he was supposed to be doing. He is now like working a desk job, behind the scenes stuff. Him and the mother have some tension. Now they've moved in her mother into the house, and their one son is now 8 years older, and their one daughter is now 8 years old because she's been born, and they're still reeling with the grief of Katie. And I really think that not only is this plot really good as far as the setup goes, but on top of that, Lee Cronin knows character work. If you've seen Evil Dead Rise, he knew how to set up that family, how to build the tension, how to build the relationships. All those characters are really great, I feel like, in that film. And he does the same thing here. You have the kids who I feel like, for the most part, not really bad acting. You've got really great performances from the parents, especially the lead actor, the guy who plays the father. I've seen him in stuff where I can't think of his name right now, but he's a very good actor. On top of that, he does such a great job of showing like what losing a child will do to a family. Even though they have a family, you're still losing a part of yourself, and it's sad. And so for the most part of this movie, that's where I feel like it kind of drags too, because you spend like 15 minutes before she gets kidnapped. You spend like another 15 minutes doing this. Like she doesn't show up. Katie doesn't show back up again until like 40-something minutes in the movie. Maybe 30 minutes. And when she's found in a sarcophagus. She was on a plane. The plane crashed. Sarcophagus had her up in it, and she's alive. And of course, that's when things start to happen. Now, without spoiling it, I will say it kind of goes into the cliche route. And I only say it's cliche because 100%, if it's what you're thinking is happening, it's exactly what you think is happening. Now, once again, I'm sure somebody out there is bamboozled. They're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I feel like for the most part you are. Like, it's exactly like the movie starts off with a different family and some other stuff, and like you instantly go, oh, okay, this was happening. Like, it's kind of like what you think from the trailer. It's exactly what you're thinking. If you've seen it once, you've seen it again. So then that's where I kind of have some problems with the plot, because it started off really cool, not really that original towards the end. On top of that, this movie I think does really great when it comes to the gore. Once again, you've seen Evil Dead Rise, very much same type of gore, same type of violence. Now, this is where I want to just throw this out here. I want to say this is a nitpick. I don't want to count off for this though, because much like when I review comedy films, I think comedy is subjective. Same with horror films. What you find scary, I might not find scary, and vice versa. But my biggest thing is that this is listed as a horror movie, and the whole time I was like, huh, it's gross. You got some stuff with a toenail. You've got some crazy, like, nasty shots and some peeling of skin. Horrifying, nasty things. But it's not really like I'm scared. Like, I'm not coming home going, oh my God, Katie? I didn't care, okay? I think the overall entity that's going on, of what's happening to her, I don't really think, oh, okay. I just didn't care. And that leads more into like problems of the plot, stuff like that. But once again, I do want to give shout out where it's at. Like I said, like gore, all the other stuff, really great. So now I want to get into what I found disappointing. I don't necessarily want to say negative, just kind of disappointing. Plot's kind of samey. I've already said that earlier. I really think that the movie drags. It does. Even if you didn't have the 30 minutes of previews, it's just 2 hours and 14 minutes, and half of it, like, Katie's not doing nothing. There's like some creepy tension things, and you're like, oh, okay. And it's just, we're going through the beats, and it's like, okay, I'm trying to see what's going on. Now, I mentioned this in my out of theater reaction, which is technically on the Patreon if you want to join that. I don't want to spoil. I'm not trying to spoil. I'm trying to like walk on eggshells. Basically, I'm tired of these movies. Okay, this isn't this movie's fault necessarily. I'm just tired of these films that I'll see where it's like this great entity or being or demon or whatever is like very powerful and it's like inside this person or like doing this thing or whatever, and then like they all get their ass whooped. Kind of tired of that. If you're all powerful and we're like able to levitate and pushing people out of windows and force choking people like Darth Vader, I should not lose. I should not. That's my problem with a lot of modern day horror. I feel like they set up the horror threats to be too like even like the Insidious movies, like the new ones coming out. I'm just like, how are we surviving this? You shouldn't survive this. Now, I feel like the biggest issue I had with the film, because initially I was kind of okay, even though I had these problems, I still think I liked it. I just didn't love it. This is where I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I don't think I love the third act at all. It was very much like, okay, whatever. Things happen where you're like, it makes sense, but it's like, whatever. I feel like we're going more for that shock value and gore more than like, hey, we're trying to like really hammer in this story. And also, I feel like the last 5 to 10 minutes are also kind of rushed, just trying to get to like a point, which is weird because it's 2 hours, 14 minutes. For me, if I was giving this a score, we got to get to it now. I've been thinking the whole time and giving this review. I don't think this is a bad movie. I feel like we live in a world where people think it's a 0 or a 10. You can't have an in-between. If you give it a 5, somebody's like, oh, you hate it? No, that means I think it's like middling. It's okay. I would give this movie, just because I do like the performances, I do like the first and second act for the most part, and I do like the gore and everything else, which means I kind of mainly liked most of the movie. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. That's where I think I'm going to hold it. I think I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because I think everything is really well done. Everything is, it's just, I think the third act loses you with everything else. The third act loses me in story. The third act loses me in pacing. And the third act kind of loses me in horror. It's like we had all these things where we're setting things up. You're like, oh, okay, what's going on? And then like your payoff is just kind of, whatever. There also, didn't mention this either, there's a side plot with a cop. I actually enjoyed that. I was like, okay, I like this. I thought it was cool. I like that character. And so, yeah, with that, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this film. I don't want to hear comments like, this isn't a mummy. Yeah, I know that. Okay, it's not Lee's fault. Don't blame my boy. But yeah, let me know if you like it or not. I would say compared to the rest of them, I was like, shit. I'm gonna have a ranked video. This is real. I mean, it's not a Mummy movie, so I'm gonna put it in there though. But yeah, how'd you like this movie? How'd you didn't like it? Is it just disappointing for you? Did you hate it? Whatever. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this film. I do want to take a quick second right here to thank my Patreon producers. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. And if you guys want to support the channel, head on over to the link down in the description below, where you'll get spoiler reviews, you'll get out of theater reactions, you'll get movie vlogs, and you'll get much more content, even gaming reviews. And with that, like, subscribe for more. I'll catch you guys on the next one. What's up, Chocolatiers? Welcome back to another video. So we're going to be ranking the Mummy films. Yes, even the new one, even though it's totally not a Mummy film. Let's get it. By the way, don't want to hear it. You didn't rank all the Mummy films. We're doing the Brendan ones to now. So let's go. So coming at number 6, we've actually got The Mummy 2017. This is the worst one. You got an unlikable protagonist. This is supposed to be like the Iron Man equivalent. He's not Iron Man. Dr. Jekyll's cool. There's some cool set pieces like the plane scene, but outside of that, I could care less about your story, care less about your world. It spends more time trying to do world building and setting up stuff for the future. Coming in at number 5, we have got The Scorpion King. A lot of people hate this movie. I actually don't. I think The Rock's pretty fun in this movie. I think the Memon, and it's not, is it Mem? No, I don't know if I'm getting that villain set. We're not looking it up. Whoever villain is, thought he was cool. I thought the last scene where he shoots him the arrow in the chest, that's pretty fun. Like that. But outside of that, kind of flat outside of that. But you do have some cool scenes. I love the anthill scene. The anthill scene beats the last movie we just talked about. Coming in at number 4, we've got Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. I know you're probably thinking, how's this not Lee Cronin's Mummy? Well, I think Lee Cronin's The Mummy does. Well, let's just be honest. Rachel Weisz is in this film. It pissed me off a little bit. The Yeti scene's pretty cool. I think the stuff with the sun and Brendan Fraser's pretty cool in this movie. And the action actually is better and the CGI is better. So, you know, everything for the most part is pretty good. It's just that the plot wasn't there for me. And Rachel Weisz is not there. So, get out of my face. Let's go. All right, coming in at number 3, we've got Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Pretty much, I think this movie actually works for me. Everything. I think plot, direction, scale, scope, horror, all those diopter shots, I think everything works. The only problem is, into the second act, into the third act. Your payoff for the story, I think it's a load of crap. I didn't like it. I also don't like the ending of this film, which is kind of weird because it's kind of positive. I don't know. It just felt kind of cheap. I also do not like most of the slow pacing. This movie could have been an hour and a half and told the same story and then every single thing they did up in this film. 2 hours, 14 minutes, plus the 30 minutes of AMC credits and previews. Absolutely insanity. I was here for 3 hours for a movie that I thought was just kind of okay. Coming in at number 2. Number 2. The Mummy Returns. The Mummy did indeed return. I think that this movie does pretty much almost everything that the original one does better, except it's got crappy CGI. I actually like the inclusion of the Scorpion King in here, but I like it a lot more than the previous films, clearly. I think this movie's a lot of fun. I think that a lot of people give this movie hate because of the bad CGI. I don't think bad CGI is a way to rate a movie. I think that the movie itself is good if you ignore it. So, there you go. Coming in at number 1, number 1. You guys already know what it is. The best one since 1999 is The Mummy. From the scale, the scope, feels like a little Uncharted-ish, a little Indiana Jones-ish. It's so nice. Got such a vibe to it. Perfectly filmed, perfectly directed. You got some great action there. You got an even better love story they're telling. And it's just so awesome. It's actually a classic. Hands down, so much fun. Absolutely love this. Villain is crazy good. He's awesome. Opening scene's even better. Wow. That's the film right there. Mummy 4, live up to that. Or at least 2. We don't need the rest on this list. And so with that, that is my Mummy ranked. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Give me your ranked list. I'm tired of this. I see this all the time on YouTube. Well, actually, that was dumb that you put this here and this. My opinion I just want to hear yours. So give me your ranked list. We're not debating. You're not going to change my mind. I don't give a fuck. I just want to hear your ranked list. Do you think Lee Cronin's is the best? Hell, I'm sure there's somebody out there. Do you think that do you like 2017 better? Whoa! So let me know down in the comments below. And before I let you guys go, I just want to thank my Patreon producers. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. If you guys want to support the channel, hit the link down in the description below, where you'll get gaming reviews, you'll get movie vlogs, and you'll get many more content, some early uploads, stuff like that. And you'll be helping out the channel. And if you can't toss a buck my way, hey, economy sucks out there. I understand. Like, subscribe. That's free. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.